This episode is brought to you by my friend Rebecca Walser, a financial expert who can help you protect your wealth. Book your free call with her team by going to friendofdinesh.com. That's friendofdinesh.com. Coming up, Debbie and I are going to do our Friday Roundup. We'll discuss a series of issues from how the midterms are turning out to the real criminals of January 6th to Biden's new border scam, plus some updates on our recent trip to visit Debbie's mom in the Rio Grande Valley. I'll put forward a concrete GOP plan and agenda for 2023. And I'll begin my discussion of the challenges facing Odysseus when he gets home to discover his life and his son's life are in mortal danger. This is the Dinesh D'Souza Show.
America needs this voice. The times are crazy. In a time of confusion, division, and lies, we need a brave voice of reason, understanding, and truth. This is the Dinesh D'Souza Podcast.
I've been watching things pretty closely for the midterms to see how it's all playing out. And my view is that things so far are going pretty well. The GOP is, in some way, its bumbling self. But nevertheless, it has an easy target. The GOP's easy target, of course, is the horrific actions of the Biden administration. And then also Biden's, you would almost call it this petulant obstinacy, which is, by the way, characteristic sometimes of nasty people when they get really old. They can't back down. They can't admit so they just dig in and they snap at people who raise any kind of objections, however moderate. And they, in a sense, put their nastiness on full exhibit. So you've got this nasty man, Biden. You've got these very unattractive characters, Pelosi and Schumer. Schumer, by the way, has been kind of in the background, but you've got Vodka Nancy out there, and she's a miserable, frightening character. And then you've got all these candidates, and a lot of them are just freaks and weirdos. You got Stacey Abrams in Georgia. You've got this kind of mutant Fetterman in Pennsylvania. I mean, think about it. Fetterman, if you decode his statements, and half his statements make absolutely no sense. I mean, if I were running the Fetterman campaign, this would be my slogan. It would be something to the effect of, listen, I'm retarded, but I'm not as retarded as Joe Biden. He's more retarded than me. I have half a brain, but Joe Biden doesn't have a brain. And if he can run the whole country without a brain, I should be able to run Pennsylvania with half a brain. Half a brain should be enough. So this is Fetterman. So this is the quality of some of the candidates. Now, there are other candidates who are a little better at the art of camouflage. Ryan, for example, in Ohio is trying to act as a moderate, although I think he's been very effectively exposed by J.D. Vance. And then you have, Katie Hobbs is just a disaster in Arizona. And as far as I can see, Carrie Lake is making total mincemeat of her. Notice that I'm mingling here the gubernatorial races along with the Senate races. And But Oz is catching up to Fetterman. I think we'll pass him soon. Blake Masters is doing better. And so it's looking to be a pretty healthy landscape. So let's say the GOP takes the House and Senate, what should the GOP do? Now, it's tempting to say the GOP needs to have a legislative agenda. And quite frankly, off the top of my head, I could list 17 things that you could legislatively do. But then I'm always stopped in my tracks by realizing, well, to what end? Yes, you can do these things. Let's say you pass them. You get them through the House. You get them through the Senate. Well, Biden's going to veto them. And you don't have a supermajority to overrule Biden's veto. So the legislative agenda, I say, is mostly symbolic. It's mostly aimed at, listen, here's the stuff we're going to get passed, and we're going to get passed only to show you that if we get the presidency in 2024, these are the things we will actually do. We will get them passed, the president will sign them, they will become law, and this is a way that we can put our country back on track. Really, what the GOP Congress is there to do is to obstruct, to block, to thwart, to essentially stifle Bidenism in its tracks, to shut down the whole Democratic agenda, to use divided government to maximum effect, to use the power of the purse to say to the Democrats, whatever you want to do, we're not going to be paying for. And so the Republicans are there to put a spoke into the wheel of the Democrats' bicycle, you might say. And then on top of that, hearings and impeachments. Let the hearings and impeachments begin. I would say let's start by impeaching Mayorkas at Homeland Security. Let's impeach Merrick Garland. And by the way, there's no reason you have to do impeachments one after the other. You can do multiple impeachments at the same time by creating committees, each of which review a particular impeachment. And of course, we've got to impeach Biden. We've got to impeach Biden for the simple reason that we can. They impeached Trump for no other reason than the fact that they didn't like him and they could impeach him, and so they did twice. We can impeach Biden. We will have the power to do it. We will not have the power to remove him from office, but we will have the power to surround him with the disgrace of impeachment, which, by the way, has only enveloped a handful of presidents throughout U.S. history. Let's add Biden to that impeachment list. Impeachment is also a way to create a public exhibition. Now, the media will be again, this is a pointless impeachment. There's no point to it. Our goal is to ignore what they say. We have no interest in what the media has to say, no interest in talking to them. Either they want to broadcast the impeachments or they don't. Either they want to cover the news or they don't. Let's say they don't want to cover the news. So what? The impeachment is still going to go forward. The hearings are still going to go forward. In fact, people are going to be asking, what's the point of having journalism if it isn't actually covering what the government is doing? So the beauty of winning the Congress is you now have the government, or you have a large part of the government. And my message to the GOP is don't spend all your time trying to get there only to look around in an idiotic fashion to ask, what now? Are we just going to twiddle our thumbs for 2 more years and hope we win the presidency? No. Use the power that you have in the meantime to press the case, to block Biden on every front, to investigate, to impeach. And it's quite possible we'll be able to root out people like Mayorkas, because once you disgrace a cabinet officer enough, there's not much that he can do to be effective anymore. And people also know that this is a guy who's being watched at every juncture. There's almost no freedom of movement. So let's get rid of Mayorkas. Let's get rid of Merrick Garland. By the way, these people may need to be prosecuted, but that may have to wait till later, until we control the Justice Department and can prosecute them. This is a very serious situation we're in this country, so we shouldn't treat power as something simply to be held, but rather something that needs to be used. You all have helped to build MyPillow into the incredible company it is today, and have trusted Mike Lindell to give you a great night's sleep. Now, on top of the special exclusively for my listeners that Mike is offering on the Percale and Giza Dream bed sheets, marked down, by the way, as low as $29.98. Wow. Mike is also changing the game with his 3-piece towel set. This set is made with USA cotton, making it extremely absorbent and yet still providing that soft feel you look for in a towel. The set comes with 1 bath towel, 1 hand towel, 1 washcloth, typically retailing for $49.99, but now for a limited time, 3-piece towel set for the low price of $19.98 with promo code Dinesh. Call 800-876-0227. That number again, 800-876-0227. Or just go to mypillow.com. Now, to get all these discounts, you need to use promo code DINESH Dinesh. Debbie and I are here for our Friday roundup, and we want to start by talking a little bit about the midterms. Normally in these situations we have, well, it's almost like the optimist and the pessimist. And I don't think you'll have to wait long to guess which is which. By and large, Debbie is the pessimist. She just feels, I think you feel the Democrats are just so diabolical.
They're diabolical, and they really remind me. I always make the analogy of the big brother and the younger kid, and the big brother pinches him, and then he goes and tells his mom, Johnny pinched me, and then Johnny's like, what? I didn't do anything. What are you talking about? And so it's the sneaky brother that gets away with everything, right? And just bullies the little one all the time, and the little one can never fight back, because the mom is always siding with the big brother. So, Debbie, I think agrees that the momentum is going our way, but she always feels like the kind of the sneakiness of the left
Sneakiness on all fronts, by the way, including just misleading people. Think of the way they're, for example, releasing gas from the gas reserve.
And Biden says, it's not a political move.
Nothing to do with politics at all.
What?
Even before he did that, he's calling the Saudis and he's telling the Saudis, listen, you can reduce production, which is to say drive up prices, but don't do it before the midterms. So Biden is begging the Saudis to essentially help him to do well in the midterms. The Saudis, to their credit, basically told him to go take a hike.
Yeah. And he's releasing those reserves, which it's kind of dangerous to do that because here we are, not knowing whether or not Biden doesn't think, but Putin, whether he's going to pull the switch on the nuclear, and then we're just sitting here helpless without our
having
drained our, and he claims that it's not, that we have plenty. But why do that?
Well, he's admitted, I think, that the reserves are down to half and are now going below that amount.
Yeah.
So, the other thing I think that's interesting is the Democrats are hoping that they're going to be saved by a single issue. The Dobbs decision and abortion.
Yeah, I got a very interesting text because, of course, in Texas, the governor race is it is that the Democrats are using Abbott as kind of the punching bag, right? Because they're saying that he's taking away women's rights and all of that. And I got this text from Meg with Mothers Against Greg Abbott. There's a group called Mothers Against Greg Abbott here in Texas, right? And it's got a meme, and it tells you when to early vote. Early voting starts, I believe, next week, and it goes through November 8th. And then not election day is on November 8th. But anyway, so the meme says abortion is a fundamental right every Texan deserves to access. And I just about flipped over my seat when I hear somebody say something so diabolical and so just out of it.
I mean, set a little context for this. In fact, Debbie comes to me and Debbie goes, Dinesh, what would you say are the fundamental rights that are enumerated in the Constitution? And so I kind of go through the list from, I say, well, there's a First Amendment right to freedom of speech. There's also a First Amendment right to conscience. That's the right to religious freedom. Second Amendment right to defend yourself. There's a Fourth Amendment right against unreasonable search and seizure, a right to due process of law, a right to equal protection of the law. So these are our fundamental rights, a right to vote. And then in the mix, the Democrats are throwing in the right to abort your kid. And your point, I think, is that, wait a minute, shouldn't life be the...
Yeah, life should be the fundamental right, not death.
Right.
And that's what they're saying. Death is a fundamental right. But I like how they say Texans lost access to critical care that protects rape, incest victims, children, and pregnant Texans in life-threatening situations. First of all, those are extremely rare cases. And I believe that there is a provision for those cases, right? But they want you to think that there's not. They want you to believe that lie, that there isn't. And again, they've been using abortion as a form of birth control since it started, right? This is something that...
This is almost like making an argument for slavery. And by the way, the Democrats' arguments on slavery parallel very closely, but saying things like, listen, we really need slavery because, under certain conditions, when there's drought on the farm, there's no food to be had, we need to have slaves to help us get the little extra cotton out of the ground so we can sell it. In other words, appeal to extreme necessity.
Yeah.
When the actual practice of enslavement is pure exploitation.
And they were on the wrong side of history then, and they're going to be on the wrong side of history now. So,
we were talking about how future generations, we always think future generations look back and they really condemn the past because, they had all these horrible practices that we have now thankfully gotten beyond. No, the point is future generations may very well look back at our time and decide that we, in our own time, were the real barbarians. Are you watching your retirement slip through your hands every day? Are you worried about a black swan market event that could be coming? This is an event that comes out of nowhere and basically decimates your accumulated savings. That's not all. Interest rates going up, inflation skyrocketing. How can we protect our money? How can you get ahead of what's happening with the economy? This is not a time to wing it or go with a hunch. You need a qualified expert on your side. Well, I'm not that expert, but my friend Rebecca Walzer is. She's a tax attorney and wealth strategist with her MBA from the London School of Economics. Rebecca and her team will help to prepare you and your money for the turbulent times ahead. We all work hard for our money. We can use some really good guidance to help us build on what we have. Go to friendofdinesh.com, book your complimentary introductory call today to see if you qualify. That's friendofdinesh.com. Let Rebecca Walzer's team of experts protect your wealth during these unprecedented times. Recently, in connection with January 6th, Nancy Pelosi was seen on video. The video goes back to January 6th itself, but she's being apparently videoed by her own daughter, who's making a documentary on January 6th. Very interesting. And Nancy Pelosi, now famously, is saying, oh, yeah, let Trump come to the Capitol. He doesn't have the courage to do it. He's all talk. And then, of course, if he shows up, I'm going to punch him in the face. Doesn't matter if I have to go to jail for it. So we haven't talked about this, at least not on the podcast, about what do you make of this kind of bravado?
You touched a little bit on it a few days ago, but she doubled down on it. They asked her on MSNBC on Tuesday, did you really mean what you said, about punching Trump? And she basically said, yes, I did. However, that scenario wouldn't have happened because Trump didn't have the courage to come to the Hill, And so this Wicked Witch of the West, actually now she's drunk Wicked Witch of the West, is crazy. And I think that she should be investigated for her part in January 6th, because again, it's a little suspicious to me that she would have her daughter do a documentary that day. How many times do you do a documentary on the day that you're counting the votes, as far as
presumably she didn't know what was going to go down. Presumably she wasn't involved in any kind of orchestration of January 6th. Presumably, in fact, the left is even denying that Trump made the request to have added security, and that request was denied by Pelosi. So from the left's point of view, this was going to be counting the votes, and there was going to be a Trump rally. So how would the Pelosi family already go, this is going to be great stuff for a documentary?
Let's get footage of all this. Let's get footage.
And why would they even talk about Trump coming to Capitol Hill? Because the point being, it's almost like before the events of January 6th, Pelosi knew that coming to Capitol Hill, coming into the Capitol, is something that was a possibility. Yeah, that's why she goes, let him show up. Let's see if he shows up.
And that it was going to be an issue, right? And so, listen, I think there's a lot to discover here with her part and her role in this. And we're going to get to the bottom of it.
We are.
We have to.
For sure. Well, I know that we, as a film team, we're looking into this.
Yeah.
The other thing I think is interesting, we had Ed Tarpley, who's the lawyer for Stuart Rhodes. And he was saying, look how evil it is for the January 6th committee to be poisoning the well, really poisoning the public and poisoning the jury by taking information from the trial, putting it out in the public domain, but not doing it in a courtroom setting where you can question evidence or cross-examine anyone. It's just propaganda that is then amplified by the media. So
how does that not qualify for a mistrial?
You'd think it would. The only reason it doesn't is because you've got essentially Amit Mehta, who is an Obama appointee, a left-wing judge. In fact, I would argue, in a sense, not a judge at least in the traditional sense of what it. He's an activist masquerading as a judge. Most of these guys are. And so, you just feel so bad for these people because, look, some of them may have done things that are wrong. They might deserve some punishment, but you have to trust in a system that it's going to dole out the punishment in a proportionate manner.
Right.
Okay, you broke a window. Yeah. You should get what people get for breaking a window. Mm-hmm. You were trespassing. You should get what people get for trespassing. None of that is happening here.
Not in this case. And we hear of these defendants. We know many of them. And they're afraid because they know that this is not a case where they're going to be judged by a jury of their peers. works. They absolutely know this, and it's heartbreaking that you go into a judicial system, into a court, and you've been indicted for something, and you already know what the outcome is going to be based on that. It's so heartbreaking and so sad to hear from these people.
It also
saying
corrupts
that.
the plea bargaining process, because normally the way a plea bargain works is, let's say you did something wrong. You robbed a grocery store, and you realize that the penalty is going to be 2 years in prison. The government comes to you and says, hey, listen, if you will admit to what you did, you'll get 6 months or you'll get a year. And so the plea bargain process is generally a process that saves the court time, saves the government time, and you still get a lesser penalty than you might have gotten. But on the other hand, the government also faces a risk. You might get acquitted. And so this is how the process is supposed to work. But here, what happens is these defendants are saying, listen, I don't think I did it. I would like to defend myself in court, but I'm dealing with such a horrific environment in DC with all these biased jurors that whatever the government says I did, let's say they say I'm conspiring to overthrow the government of the United States and I deserve 20 years in prison, I might be facing 20 years. And so I take a ridiculous plea, a horrible plea, in which I end up doing far more than my actions would actually warrant.
Yeah. And I believe that that's the case with Stuart Rhodes. And there is a legal defense fund. If you want to contribute, if you want to help him.
We're giving money to it, and we have already, we urge you to do so.
Yeah, you find it at patriotslegaldefense.org. That's patriotslegaldefense.org. And help these guys out, because, as you know, we know that they're unfairly judged, and
the least they deserve is a good defense in a difficult situation.
If you ever get airsick or car sick like I do, you know you'll do whatever it takes to feel normal again. And I don't mean using the pills that make you drowsy or cheap sweatbands that just press on your wrist. So I've been using a device that actually works for about 15 years now. It's called Relief Band, and it's the #1 FDA-cleared anti-nausea wristband, clinically proven to quickly relieve and effectively prevent nausea and vomiting associated with motion sickness, anxiety, migraine, hangover, morning sickness, or even chemotherapy. The technology was originally developed over 20 years ago in hospitals, and it's available to you. I've been using it, like I said, for over 15 years, and I can tell you that it actually does work. Just wear it around my wrist, and I change the intensity to make it either stronger or weaker, depending on how I'm feeling. Plus, it's rated an A+ with the Better Business Bureau, and over 100,000 satisfied customers just like me.
If you want the band that actually works at relieving your nausea, check out Relief Band. If you go to reliefband.com and use promo code Dinesh, you'll get 20% off plus free shipping and a no questions asked 30-day money-back guarantee. That's Reliefband, RELIEFBAND.com, promo code Dinesh. Biden has a new announcement to make about the border, and you've been all over this, so I'll just hand over to you at this point.
Yeah. Well, a couple of things. So Biden, first of all, he's acting like there is no border crisis at all. No issue there. He doesn't want voters to even think about that when it comes to the midterm elections, right? Now, there's a really interesting guy. He's the mayor of El Paso. His name is Oscar Lesser. He's a Democrat, right? But he's been very vocal about the fact that the Biden administration is doing nothing about the border down there. And not only that, but they're actually complicit with what's happening. So he got a directive from the White House saying that do not declare a state of emergency at the border. Do not do it. And he got this directive not too long ago. And, even the El Paso officials privately and publicly say that the Biden administration urged Lesser to hold off on calling the state of emergency over the issue of illegal immigration. There have been thousands and thousands of illegals coming in through El Paso, through the Rio Grande Valley, And it's really a catastrophe. I mean, it's horrible.
I mean, every day Bill Milligan of Fox News posts videos where you just see these guys and they're traipsing in 100 here, 500 there, large numbers of people. So basically, the Biden administration is trying to tell you not to believe the evidence of your own eyes.
Yeah.
By the way, I found interesting in this context, Project Veritas has a new series of videos, and they're talking to this guy who's in the New York in the government. And what he says is that Eric Adams, the mayor, has been publicly complaining about the migrants showing up in New York. And what this guy says on the underground video is he goes, this is a problem for the Biden administration because Democrats are publicly saying, we can't deal with these people. We have no means to handle them. And of course, Biden, on the other hand, has been saying, this is not a problem. It's okay to have thousands of people in Texas and Florida, but when, dozens of them show up in Martha's Vineyard or New York or DC, it creates chaos.
In this article, it even says that. It says that the Biden officials have done the same thing in non-border states as well. Like, in other words, telling New York, Eric Adams in New York, and Muriel Bowser in Washington, D.C., do not talk about the border. Do not talk about these illegals coming to your city. Just don't do it because it looks bad. The optics look bad.
Well, what this really shows you is kind of the genius of DeSantis and Abbott in sending these migrants over there. Why?
Yeah.
Because it's forced those mayors to go, what do we do? It's a crisis. Oh, how do we handle it? Call in the National Guard. And of course, the moment they do that, they are sort of fessing up that this is a real problem. If it's a problem for them at a small scale, think of what a big problem it is for other states and for the country as a whole. And this is the reality that the Biden people are trying to camouflage. And again, they always do this right before the election. In the weeks up to the election, it's like, let's fool the American people. Let's do a big song and dance. Let's just flatly deny the facts of the matter. Once the election is over, we can then shrug and go, well, we're in. We got another 2 years, another 4 years. So now we can basically let things play out. People can be angry about it, but all they can do is talk to pollsters. There's nothing they can do to get us out until the next time around when we will do the song and dance all over again.
Yeah. And my cousin, as I've told you, my cousin from Venezuela tells me that a lot of the Venezuelans coming over, illegally across the border are criminals. There are a few that have families, and sadly, the women get raped and the children get raped. It's extremely sad that this is happening, and the Biden administration is doing absolutely nothing about it. But
it's a big issue in the midterms, and I think so. You have inflation, probably number one. Gas prices, which is part of inflation, number two. But I think the border is probably number three.
Yeah. And Nancy Pelosi says none of these are the most important. She says abortion is the most important.
Well, this is, in a way, it's a good thing because the Democrats are not really fighting on these fronts, which we think are critical. They think that somehow the Dobbs decision is their magic bullet. They're going to basically use that to turn people's attention, almost as if people are so eager to abort. I mean, by the way, let's take note of Stacey Abrams and her remarkable statement that the two issues of inflation and abortion are connected, because if you can't afford your kids, you should at least be able to abort them.
Yeah. Now, it's really interesting because I've heard this argument before, and I say to myself, there are so many families that do have money, that can afford children, that want to adopt children. They go to China, they go to Russia to get their babies because there's a shortage of kids here in America, right? And so why is Stacey Abrams and Nancy Pelosi and others so dead,
intense,
to have you abort your baby instead of giving it up for adoption? Why don't they want adoption? That is a great option for women. And the other thing is, they can't afford their medical costs during the 9 months of pregnancy. Here the Republicans don't want these women to abort their babies, but they can't afford medical care. That is hogwash. They can. There are a lot of women's organizations, women's medical centers that do help women, do give them vitamins, do ultrasounds.
Do buy them baby clothes, do provide ultrasounds. And interestingly, the Democrats, including led by Elizabeth Warren, have talked about investigating and shutting down those pregnancy centers that are providing these vital services. I've confessed before, I'm not a super fan of the flavor of a lot of veggies, but I have to admit, when I'm in the produce section in the grocery store, all the vibrant colors of fruits and veggies look really good. Now, Dr. Douglas Howard at Balance of Nature explains that all those colors you see in the produce section equal nutritional variety. Different colors signify different key nutrients. So if you eat only your favorite 1 or 2 veggies, you're missing a whole world of vital nutrients. Now, this is why Debbie and I take these 6 little fruits and veggie capsules each day. Each daily dose is made up of a blend of 31 different fruits and veggies. 31. So variety equals vitality. Give your body everything it needs with Balance of Nature. For a limited time, all new preferred customers get an additional 35% discount and free shipping on your first Balance of Nature order. Use discount code AMERICA. Call 800-246-8751. That's 800-246-8751, or go to balanceofnature.com and use discount code AMERICA. Debbie and I, when we took off last week, we were down in the Rio Grande Valley for, well, I guess we went on Thursday and we came back on Sunday. So we were there for 3 days. And we also we were visiting Debbie's mom, who's
Hi,
now well
Mom.
into her 80s. And it's really great. Her mom's sister, Karen. And we met also, your uncle happened to be in town, and his wife.
We didn't meet him. I mean, he happened to be in town.
Right.
Yeah.
He came over, and we
David.
had a very entertaining dinner.
My right-wing Uncle David. I don't have that many right-wing family relatives, but he's one of them. So I like him a lot.
Yeah, and he had us actually laughing for a good bit of the weekend. And one of the things I found very amusing is he was talking about how he became a Republican. Now, I want to point out that Debbie's story about how she became a Republican is actually very kind of legit and very solid and is rooted in ideas. Debbie became intrigued by Reagan. Reagan gave a talk in the Rio Grande Valley. You were 14 years old. You heard him. Yeah. And Debbie's like, that's what I believe. So Debbie kind of came on board for those reasons. Now, contrast this with her Uncle David. Her Uncle David he was talking about the Kennedy-Nixon race of 1960, and he goes, yeah, a bunch of us were stuffing envelopes and doing these menial tasks for Kennedy, and he goes, we didn't get paid, we were just told to do it, so we're doing it. He goes, then my buddy Manny, I think his name was Manny,
I don't remember.
says to David, he goes, hey, look over there at the Nixon campaign across the street. They're handing out free donuts. And so Manny and David were like, free donuts? We haven't heard of it. Let's head over there. So basically, according to Debbie's Uncle David, he goes over there and he realizes that, listen, if I'm going to work for a campaign, I at least should get something out of it. At least the Republicans are willing to give you something, namely free donuts. And he basically, I think, half jokingly goes, that's when I decided I was going to become a Republican.
And he's very funny, and he says a lot of stories, and half of them are true and half of them aren't.
I was going to say, your mom was like shaking her head like, David, really? That's how you became a Republican? Well, the guy's a major Trumpster now. And
absolutely. So he really gets it. Now, the other thing is, as we were driving around in Harlingen, I was looking around at all the signs, all of the election signs, campaign signs. And Vicente Gonzalez is the opponent. He's the Democrat running against Mayra Flores, who is, she's the incumbent. But so is Vicente Gonzalez, because they did a little bit of a reorganization down there. Redistricting. And so that's what happened. Now they're running against each other. But Vicente Gonzalez has a sign that says Vicente con la gente. And that means Vicente with the people in Spanish, right?
With the people.
So I said, you know what? I want to do a sign that says Vicente sin mente. That means Vicente without a mind. And it's really funny because then I see this thing that says, Vicente Gonzalez says female congressional opponent can't think or speak for herself. So he's saying she doesn't have a mind.
Well, let's think of, what he's saying basically is, and this is the Democratic line on non-white Republicans and conservatives, that they are pawns of the white supremacy establishments. And that's what he was getting at. He was basically saying, in effect, the white supremacists can't come down here directly and run against me. So they've put up this woman, Mayra Flores, who's brown, but she can't think, she can't act. What he meant is without somebody else's direction. Mm-hmm. And think of how kind of deeply insulting this is at all kinds of levels.
Not only is it deeply insulting, but what about him? I mean, what is he doing? He's touting the Democratic line of being in the valley for over 100 years and look at the valley. We go down there and we're like, really? I feel like I'm going to a land lost in time.
It's big
horrible.
news in the Rio Grande Valley when they open like a Chili's.
Yeah.
Why? Because the place is like in the 1980s or 1990s.
Well,
it's frozen in time.
I have to say, and I have to be brutally honest, it's mainly Harlingen. And that is where I grew up, where I went to high school, graduated high school. It really is a time a land that time forgot. It really is. And as you move up closer to McAllen, it starts getting a little better, but it's still not great for the amount of people that are down there. Not to mention the weather. The weather is probably the nicest weather in all of Texas. I know that winter Texans go down there all the time. People from the north.
It's warmer.
Because it's warm. Typically, it gets in the 50s and 40s in the winter time, but it doesn't last very long. It goes straight back up to the 70s. So it's great weather. So there's no reason why the valley should be the way it is.
I mean, Myra, I think this is actually your point, which I'm borrowing for the moment, and that is that Myra has a big name now. She's, thanks to many of us, we have promoted her and made her a national figure. And the good news about all this is that she can do things for the Rio Grande Valley. This Vicente Gonzalez he's an apparatchik. He's a pawn.
Yeah,
he's not somebody who's going to do anything. And this whole thing about for the people is just
it's ridiculous.
Democratic boilerplate nonsense.
Yeah, I mean, he would go to Congress. If he wins, he goes to Congress and he's going to disappear in the sea of congressmen. Whereas
he'd be a part of the Democratic chorus.
Yeah,
whereas Myra can draw attention to the valley, bring economic development down there.
Yeah, it would be a really, really nice change for the valley, and I think that they deserve it. They need it. She's all for God, family, and country, and we're all for that. And so I think that early voting starts next week. Make sure that you understand that. Especially those of you in the Rio Grande Valley. Let's turn the Rio Grande Valley red. Therefore, let's keep Texas red and the country red.
With the consumer price index increasing yet again, the stock market has been in absolute turmoil. What's our illustrious leader doing to quell the surge of inflation that's hurting so many American families? Oh yeah, spending more money and adding to the burden. Well, don't bury your head in the sand while your savings get eroded and decimated. Do something about it. I'm diversified into gold with Birch Gold, and you can be too. Text Dinesh to 989898. Birch Gold will send you a free information kit on protecting your savings with gold in a tax-sheltered account. These are great people with almost 20 years experience converting IRAs and 401ks into precious metals IRAs. Don't let the left devalue your savings. Text Dinesh to 989898. Claim your free information kit from Birch Gold. Again, you can own physical gold and silver in a tax-sheltered retirement account, and Birch Gold will help you do it. Join their thousands of satisfied customers like me. Check them out. Text Dinesh to 989898 and secure your future with gold today. I thought we would close out for the weekend by talking about the movie The Frontier Boys. Now, John Gruder came on the podcast yesterday and I thought spoke very, very disarmingly and eloquently about the filmmaking process. The guy's a real genius. And as I mentioned, Debbie and I saw his movie Sabina, which I'm trying to get into my local channel. I think I'm going to get it for December. But while we were kind of negotiating it, and John's like, you got to go through this other group. So I'm doing that. But John's like, I've got another movie for you to look at. It's my movie and I own the rights. And this is the movie, The Frontier Boys. I knew nothing about it. It's a movie that seems to be a basketball movie about high school.
Yeah.
And not generally, I would honestly say, my type of movie. So I kind of came into it almost a little reluctantly, but we were both captivated by it.
We were. The authenticity of it, I think, was really what drew me in. And it basically is about a small town, like John was saying. He moved to a small town in Michigan, and upstate Michigan, and really it's about a small town with kids that are friends from childhood, and the Frontier Boys basically is a group of 4 boys that have been friends since they were like I don't know, in elementary school. And a little bit like Stand By Me, those boys. But anyway, so it just really captivated us. I mean, it just really did.
Well, what happens is, and this is just a mark of generally a good plot, you start off and everything seems to be going well, and you've got these seemingly decent kids, and then a bad element is introduced, a kind of a dark element, and the dark element penetrates into this group, and one of the kids, who's not a bad kid, but is lured into it.
Because of his
brother, his older brother, who kind of sucks him into it. And as it turns out, another kid in this group is severely...
But we don't want to give too much away.
No, but this is the premise.
To watch,
there's a drive-by shooting, and it's part of the description of the movie.
Yeah.
And one of the kids is in a coma, gravely hurt, gravely endangered, and another kid has a dark secret that's related to what happened. And the movie just unfolds this in a very, in a beautiful way. So it's a movie that is suspenseful, and yet it brings in themes of honesty, moral choices, even faith. In the way that John does, it's imported into. It's not added on. Yes.
Yeah. It's not in your face, but it's definitely in every scene of the movie. I mean, you can just feel it, and he has an uncanny way of doing that. I don't know how he does it.
I mean, in a way, he's John is the anti-Hollywood, because think about Hollywood. They act, and if you look at Hollywood movies, and by the way, this isn't just the Hollywood of now. Even if you go to the earlier Hollywood. It's almost as if going to church, praying, even in a difficult situation, is not part of the lives of the American people, because you never see it. No one is in a crisis and goes, well, you know what? Let me get down on my knees. So with rare exceptions, Hollywood acts as if the world is a secular place. And the only time they deal with small town preachers is if there's a small town preacher and he's a secret member of the Ku Klux Klan. There's a small town preacher and he's actually a murderer. So they expose the hypocrisy. Hypocrisy is the Hollywood's great sin. Well, John approaches the world as if, you know what? There are real people in it, and they live this life, but they also wonder if there's a life to come, and they face moral choices, and then they know that moral choices have consequences. And so, and they live in a world in which the supernatural is part of what they think and talk about. And believe. And some of them will put their life behind it. And John has a way of showing that in situations. His movie, in a way, is very reminiscent of a very good movie we saw, Father Stew.
Oh, yes.
Which is,
it's like that,
which has Mark Wahlberg and Mel Gibson. By the way, that's a movie worth seeing. But just about the Frontier Boys, it's on my Locals channel. It's frontierboys.locals.com. It's a great movie for you to watch this weekend. Don't just surf Netflix and, most of the stuff on there is just complete nonsense, rubbish. But here we're picking rubbish, I say in my old British style. But look, we try to pick films that are really worth seeing. I don't put any movies into my Locals channel.
And you are picky.
I'm very picky.
You're extremely. We watch a movie and you dissect it. You're like, well, I think this scene could have been better. I think that scene could have been better. I don't think they should have done this. The ending.
Well,
was
I've
horrible,
always viewed movies somewhat, critically. But now I'm viewing movies critically as someone who also makes films. So I'm looking at it from almost from the manufacturer end, you could say.
Yeah, we look at it for all aspects. I mean, we enjoy it, but we also dissect it for what it is. And I tell you, I've seen two of John's movies, and he's unbelievubly amazing.
He's one of the best filmmakers out there. So frontierboys.locals.com. When you go to the page, it'll give you two choices. You can subscribe, buy an annual subscription, $50 to my Locals channel. Then you get my weekly Q&A, Dinesh Unchained. You also get exclusive content, and you get access to all the movies I'm going to put up there. There's 2,000 Mules up there. There's the Johnny Cash movie, Long Road Home. There's now the Frontier Boys. And over the next 3 months, there are going to be probably 5 or 6 other movies going up as well, all free to you as part of your subscription. Or if you just want to buy this film, stream it, watch it, you can do that. There's another option. You just purchase the film, stream it, watch it. You won't regret it. some of us would do just to be young again. The simple things like climbing stairs, getting in and out of bed, and taking a walk aren't always that simple. Too many aches and pains, but they can be, because thankfully now there's 100% drug-free solution to those aches and pains, and it's called Relief Factor. Relief Factor supports your body's fight against inflammation. That's the source of aches and pains. The vast majority of people who try Relief Factor order more because it works for them. Debbie's a true believer. She can finally do the exercises she loves, like planks and push-ups and a stationary bike, all thanks to Relief Factor. It's been a real game changer for her and for so many other people. You too can benefit. Try it for yourself. Order the 3-week quick start for the discounted price of only $19.95. Go to relieffactor.com or call 833-690-7246 to find out more about this offer. The number again, 833-690-7246, or go to relieffactor.com. You'll feel the difference. Odysseus arrives back finally on his home ground. He is on Ithaca, but interestingly, he doesn't know that. His ship washes up on the shore, and Homer tells us that Athena cast a sort of a mist around the ship. So Odysseus, although he's home, he doesn't recognize his own island. And kind of touchingly, he gets off the boat and he says the same thing, now for the third or fourth time, that he said when he lands in strange places. This is Odysseus. Where am I now? Are those who live here violent and cruel, or are they kind to strangers, folks who fear the gods? So here's Odysseus again defining Xenia as a central theme of civilization. It turns out a central theme of the Odyssey. And we're going to be observing both the Xenia, the hospitality, and the lack of Xenia, the anti-Xenia, if you will, of the suitors who are boisterously loitering around and plotting in Odysseus's own palace, in his own house. Odysseus scrambles to his feet and looks around and is approached by a stranger, a man, but it turns out that this is actually the goddess Athena disguised as a man. And she's giving Odysseus instruction. She's telling him what to do. She tells him first that I, Athena, will disguise you, Odysseus, so that people will not recognize you. Odysseus is, and he kind of knows it, in danger. He's in danger because there are these suitors, over 100 of them. Who are they? Well, they are the angry and, you may say, spoiled young men raised in noble families on Ithaca. But these are bad guys, and they are plotting against Odysseus, against his wife Penelope, and against his son Telemachus. So Odysseus has to be cautious, and it's best for him if he's going to, and he's really by himself, he might be able to recruit, if he's able to, his son Telemachus to help him, but it's the two of them against more than 100 suitors. So Odysseus needs a plan. And for him to be able to develop this plan, Athena goes, listen, I'm going to shrivel up your skin. I'm going to turn your supple arms and legs into essentially the body of an old man. I'm going to dress you up in rags, so when people see you, they will cross the street. And I'm going to dispatch you. I'm going to instruct you to go to the outskirts of your own property, where there is a kind of rundown small house that is owned by a man, a swineherd, as it turns out, a guy who looks after pigs. This guy's name is Eumaeus. He is, in fact, a slave of Odysseus, but he is a loyal slave. And we'll talk as we go on about this issue that Homer deals with, where Homer basically says there are two kinds of slaves, good slaves and bad slaves. And the good slaves are the slaves who are loyal to the truth, but they're also loyal to Odysseus, who is the lawful king of Ithaca. And the bad slaves are the ones who conspire with the suitors. In some cases, in the female cases, who sleep with the suitors, but these are the bad slaves who ultimately want to be part of the regime that overthrows Odysseus. So Athena tells Odysseus, go see Eumaeus, this swineherd, and kind of get intelligence from him, ask him about what's going on. She says, I'm going to leave here and I'm going to go get your son Telemachus, who is still visiting Menelaus in Sparta. So we now need to kind of go back to the early chapters of the Odyssey, where Telemachus, remember the first 5 books of the Odyssey are called the Telemachy. Telemachus takes off on a journey. He visits Nestor in Pylos. He visits Menelaus in Sparta. And when we left Telemachus, he said, well, now I'm planning to go back, but he hasn't gone back. And so the action then moved away from Telemachus to his father, Odysseus. We've been following Odysseus all this way. And now, essentially, the 2 threads are going to be pulled together. The Telemachy and the Odyssey are going to be kind of brought together, and the father and son will now work in concert against the conspiratorial suitors. So Athena goes, I'm going to go get Telemachus. You go see this swineherd Eumaeus, find out what you can from him. And Odysseus, with his famous caution, even though he's told by Athena, this is a guy who's kind of on our side, which is to say somebody that you can trust, Odysseus does not trust him. Odysseus does not even tell Eumaeus who he is. Odysseus shows up as a stranger and basically says, I'm a beggar. I need a place to stay. And interestingly, he is given very good Xenia by Eumaeus. Here's Eumaeus talking now to Odysseus. He goes, what I have to give is small, but I will give it gladly. You should know that Eumaeus doesn't know he's talking to his own lawful king. He would act completely differently. But we see here that he is willing to share the little that he has with a man that he thinks is of his own same social status. And this is the essence of Xenia. So Odysseus, arriving in Ithaca, begins by experiencing, even from a humble man, some very good Xenia.
Subscribe to the Dinesh D'Souza podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify, or watch on Rumble, YouTube, and SalemNow.com.